With the release of Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1, it's time to stop and rank all 7 Mission Impossible films. If you're new to the channel, I'm Max Dinderberg here on Max Talks Movies. We talk tons of movies and TV shows, as well as if you're new to the channel, please subscribe, ring the bell. I do these types of movie rankings weekly, as well as other movie reviews, TV show reviews, and I do a weekly box office breakdown show. So please subscribe, ring that bell if you're new to the channel, comment down below what is your ranking of the Mission Impossible fans. This is a pretty fantastic franchise for the most part. I think a lot of people have a lot of different rankings because a lot of these movies are fantastic. So let me know your thoughts on your ranking. Also, let me know your thoughts on my ranking. Where do you see the disagreement in what I say about the particular movies? Also, please like the video, the thumbs up button. That's how you support this channel more than you guys think. Helps the YouTube algorithm out. So more people will be recommended to this video. So please hit that like button, the thumbs up button down below. Without further ado, let's get into my ranking of the Mission Impossible films. Again, this franchise has been going on since 1996 now, so 27 years now. It's unbelievable. Now let's get ready for my 7 movie ranking. Coming in for number 7, I think, is everyone's number 7, which is Mission Impossible 2, directed by John Woo. This is no means an awful, atrocious movie. But it's definitely the one that just doesn't really feel the same as connected as the other 6 films now in this franchise. There's still a lot of fun moments in the film, especially with the action set pieces. Tom Cruise is climbing a rock. The rock is one of the opening sequences. The John Woo flair is definitely interesting and something that none of the rest of the films in this franchise bring to the table. Again, I really like Tandy Newton. I don't really love the romance. But this film is definitely one of the most forgettable films in the franchise. I think this is easily the least interesting romance that the franchise has set up before. And I think the film feels like it has these life stakes that just aren't that interesting. And there are a lot of different types of movies being thrown in here. I think John Woo's style, for me, clashes more than fits together with the Mission Impossible mold that the franchises have set up. And that's what I always doesn't really like. Also, I've never been a big fan of Ambrose as the villain played by Gregory Scott. Never that interesting. And I feel like this movie has a lot of things that happen off screen that are being talked about on screen. I think this movie could have shown a lot more of the Nia and Sean relationship more than we got in this movie. So overall, it's definitely it's like at best an okay movie, but still, if this is your best, the worst movie of a franchise, I think your franchise is in great shape. Now we have a big step up to number 6, which is where we all started with this franchise all the way back in 96 with the first Mission Impossible directed by Brian De Palma. This is, again, very similar to Mission Impossible 2. This film is very different from the rest of the franchise of what it's become with its high action, all these big time life altering stunts. And this is not what this first film is. And it's really fascinating. I rewatched these films leading into Dead Reckoning Part 1. And it does just feel so different. Very similar to obviously the TV show that it's based on. But it's really a spy espionage thriller more than it is an action movie with spy things thrown into the mix. Again, Tom Cruise is iconic. There's a lot of iconic things going on. I think this movie might have the most tension fueled things in the entire franchise, with obviously the scene where he climbs down the wall in the CIA or police headquarters, with the rat climbing on the wall with Jean Reno's character. All of his team gets killed immediately into the movie. As we get introduced to Ving Rhames as Luther, we also get Henry Czerny's iconic Kittredge and the iconic restaurant scene with the aquarium thing falling over. This has tons of fun stuff. There are some action scenes in here, but this is a very intense movie. And I think it's the only movie in the franchise that really makes you pay attention to the dialogue. Whatever someone says or does, you have to watch their every move. And everyone does feel suspicious into the mix in this movie. My only problem with I think this really holds us back is kind of the big twist of the John Voight character. Every time I watch it, the more obvious it feels like it gets in a bad way. It was just the way Voight's acting and really the character sold his death in the cold open. It just always felt like he was obviously going to be the villain of the movie. It definitely pulls me out of the movie sometimes when the characters are kind of a step behind of the audience. And it just felt like the John Voight twist was just very much obvious. for this movie. And as I said, it isn't as exciting of a movie. And it's not one of my favorite teams that he's had. But overall, it's a great start to the franchise. Moving into number 5, that is where we get Mission Impossible 3 back in 2006, directed by J.J. Abrams. This, for me, is where the franchise really kicked into high gear for the remainder of its run. So for me, the rest of the franchise is well above the first Mission Impossible. I think the first Mission Impossible was well above Mission Impossible 2. We're into fantastic territory here with Mission Impossible 3. And this is where J.J. Abrams kind of brought his Alias history into this show with the action and really the cleverness of the spy things with the mask and all those type of things, I think, really begun in this movie. You can tell this franchise really took into another gear with this movie. Philip Seymour Hoffman, probably the most memorable villain that this franchise has had, even though he's a villain who really, again, can't go into combat one-on-one with Ethan Hunt. Hoffman's character is very cold. Again, he's probably one of the best actors that the franchise has ever had, and he brings that gravitas to the villain role in this movie. And it's also the most personal Mission Impossible film, as we get Ethan Hunt in an actual full-blown wife relationship for the entire movie. And while, yes, things got personal in Mission Impossible Fall when they brought Julia back in the next play by Michelle Monaghan, Julia's in the movie being taken multiple times throughout the entire film. And it's not about the team. It's not about his government. He does everything for this one person, which none of the movies bring to the table. It's kind of the personal vibe that this movie has. It's also one of the most stacked casts for this franchise. Billy Crudup, Jonathan Rhys-Meyers, Kerry Russell, Maggie Q, even Lawrence Fishburne as the CIA guy. And this is also, we got the debut of Simon Pegg as Benji, where Benji was just in one scene in this movie. And he's become one of my favorite characters of this franchise. There's a lot to offer. I do think the movie at times, just the action scenes themselves aren't as memorable. That's because it's a lot more personal, not more about the overblown action scenes. I think, again, a lot of the side characters just don't really feel that interesting. The Kerry Russell thing is interesting, but Maggie Q wasn't really a great part of this team as well. And the CIA twists and turns, I didn't really find that interesting. But overall, this is another great movie in the Mission Impossible franchise. When we get to number 4, this is where we get the 4th film, Ghost Protocol. This is directed by Brad Bird, coming out 2011. This probably has the best stunt work that this franchise has ever done, which is, climbing that huge building. I think it's in Dubai. What a thrilling, looks real type action scene, especially when you see in IMAX. It's a jaw-dropping spectacle. And Brad Bird, who obviously he's known for his animated work with Ratatouille and the 2 Incredibles films and The Iron Giant, really showed why he's actually a very capable live action director. The first hour of this movie is awesome. When you get the Russia prison escape sequences leading into Dubai, the movie is just awesome. Another really good team. We got the addition of Jeremy Renner as Brandt into the mix in this movie, a perfect person to really put on Ethan Hunt's team, as he's not. Yes, Renner's character, Brandt, can definitely get into the action. He's not like Ethan Hunt. He's going to risk his status in his country for particular things, but I really like that character as well. Really liked Paul Patton as well as Jane Carter. Wish we got more Paul Patton in this franchise. Simon Pegg as Benji got moved to basically becoming a quote-unquote field agent, not being behind the desk anymore. Also, really liked Leah Seydoux in a small role, and Josh Holloway as well. This movie is tons of fun. And I think this is where the franchise, you can feel it getting bigger and more epic and more large scale. We have this movie. I think Mission Impossible 3 really set the table to be a full-fledged action franchise, but I think Ghost Protocol's movie that took it to epic proportions. When we get to our top 3 here, we can start with the beginning of the Christopher McQuarrie era of Mission Impossible films with Mission Impossible Rogue Nation, the 5th film, directed by McQuarrie in 2015. I love this movie from start to finish. It has the best cold open that this franchise has ever had, with Benji dressed up as camouflaging as grass, Luther being up somewhere in like Saudi Arabia or something, Brandt in his doing the CIA stuff, and then Ethan Hunt being on the side of a plane. It is an awesome cold open. It's this on or Fallout from your easily the two best cold opens that the franchise has had. From an action point of view, this is easily the best cold open that the franchise has ever had. It's also introduced to me the most fascinating villain in the franchise, Solomon Lane. I think he has a lot more to do in Fallout than here. But really, this is the best world building I think the franchise has ever had, because you include Alec Baldwin as the CIA head in this film. And you really get to see the relationship, the dynamic between the CIA and the IMF, I think the best in this movie. You get to also know that I think it's also a fascinating plotline to have the syndicate really be the complete opposite, but very similar to the IMF. As Benji says in the movie, that the syndicate's the anti-IMF. It leads them to being much bigger threats. These villains aren't just here to destroy the world. They're physically capable of beating up our IMF agents and being one step ahead of our IMF agents, which puts a lot of the tension into the movie. It also includes, for me, my favorite character in this franchise, and easily, I think, the best side character other than Ethan Hunt in this entire franchise, with Rebecca Ferguson as Ilsa Faust, a very fascinating, clouded character, someone who's working for MI6, but also under Solomon Lane at the Syndicate, also wants to help out our group of friends at the IMF. A lot of good twists and turns with her character, but she's easily the most fascinating and for me, my favorite character in this entire franchise, and she's easily probably the best in this movie. And she just goes tap for tap with Tom Cruise, not just obviously in the dialogue and the talking scenes, but she kicks a lot of ass on the motorcycle and in hand-to-hand combat. She's fun to watch in this movie. So for me, Rogue Nation comes in at number 3. 1 and 2 for me, I really debated. I think on any given day, and the more times I watch Dead Reckoning Part 1, this could get higher. But as of now, I am going to put Dead Reckoning Part 1 at number 2. The more I think about this movie, the more I talk about this movie with other people, the more I can't stop loving this movie. I adore Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning. This one just came out this past week, directed by the third one from Christopher McQuarrie. This film, I think, is the perfect blend, I think, of the spy espionage thriller that the first Mission Impossible was, perfectly balanced, I think, with the absolutely jaw-dropping stunt work that this franchise has come to known for. Obviously, the cold open of this movie is really awesome, but really the first 30, 45 minutes is pretty much spy espionage thriller. If you get to the submarine stuff, and then moving into the airport scene, there is tons of flashy action going on there. But for me, the airport scene was so thrilling in this movie, with both Benji, Luther, and Ethan on completely different tasks, and Ethan obviously meeting along the way Grace, played by Haley Atwell. I think this is the best group of characters also we've ever had in a Mission Impossible film. As I said, Grace is a great person to add into this franchise to join in with Ethan, Luther, Benji, and Ilsa. Also bringing back the White Widow. Vanessa Kirby had a lot more to do here than she did in Mission Impossible Fallout, and it was a welcoming sight to see her get used the way that she did. And she is, again, a force to be reckoned with in Hollywood, as you can tell in this movie. Bringing back Kittredge all the way back from the first film. But again, yes, the motorcycle scene, jumping off that cliff, it is absolutely jaw-dropping. The train scene is tons of fun. And for a movie at 2 hours and 46 minutes, it's an absolute breeze. It felt like 2 hours more than it did closing in on 3 hours. Haley Atwell also is going to become one of my favorite characters of this franchise. Very similar to how Rebecca Ferguson really matched with Tom Cruise from a chemistry point of view. Haley Atwell brings that. And this is the best part 1 I've ever seen to any franchise ever. Obviously, Godfather is very much similar, but I mean, of a big franchise, this is easily, for me, the best part 1 ever, where it definitely has a finished, satisfied story, but also leaves that door open for Dead Reckoning Part 2 coming out next year. It's an amazing feat. I think the only reason why I hold this back from going to number 1 is that I do think the villains in Fallout are far more interesting than Gabriel and Paris in this movie, played by Esai Morales and Pom Klementif. While I think the AI, the rogue AI, is a fascinating villain, the human versions of these villains, who are Gabriel and Paris, are just not that interesting themselves. They don't really feel like major threats to Ethan and our team. And I just didn't find Gabriel, especially Gabriel, just that interesting into the movie. But overall, this is a near perfect film for me. We go into number one now. It's one of my favorite, if not my favorite action really movie of all time. And that is Mission Impossible Fallout. I've seen this movie like a billion times since its release in 2018. We have the best villain duo of the whole entire franchise as we get the returning Solomon Lane, but we also get Walker, played by Henry Cavill. And this is the first time we kind of see the team, my favorite IMF team together, which is Ethan with Luther, with Benji, and with Ilsa joining the team halfway through the movie. It is awesome to watch from start to finish. It's the best action that this franchise has ever had to offer. The helicopter scene is fantastic. Even just the chase scene with Hunt trying to chase down Walker. There's some great comedy with Benji into the movie as well. Ilsa now being someone who's still working for the MI6, still trying to go after Solomon Lane. Now with also you get the White Widow added into the mix. The whole motorcycle chase scene is fantastic. Also, as I said, could be my favorite cold open of the franchise with the whole Wolf Blitzer situation. I still remember every time I rewatched the movie that how much in shock I was. And I think this is also the best work of the mask. As I said, the Wolf Blitzer bit was really good, but also Benji being Solomon Lane to reveal that Walker was basically John Lark was another just excellent reveal in this movie. I think also it was the perfect way to bring back Julia back into this franchise, having Lane target the camp, and adding in not at all a love triangle, but it really puts the emotion on the way of Ethan Hunt now moving on from Julia to Ilsa. And how important both of them are equally into his life. I thought was also really great. Ilsa had a lot of good stuff to do this movie as well. But again, Henry Cavill versus Tom Cruise was tons of fun during the end. I think this movie also was doing the best job of the twists and turns of being a spy. So overall, Mission Impossible Fallout. What a fantastic film. I'm going to keep watching this for the rest of my life. But again, the more I watch Dead Reckoning Part 1, this could easily be number 2. But right now, for me, Fallout is very secure for me at my number 1. What's your thoughts on the Mission Impossible franchise? Let me know in the comment section down below. I'll see you guys soon.